We all came out together. We were all supposed to go home together. It didn't happen. We had all went to the movies. We get to the corner of 15th and Ridgewood, and there's another car just sitting there.
When you a kid and you going to do your first mission, you got some kids in the front and in the back with pistols, and we all feeling like adrenaline surging through our bodies, but nobody's really talking because we know what we're going to do.
We hear a car's tires screech out. We could hear the car revving next to us all the way down 15.
You scared, but you ain't scared. As a kid, you don't know what these feelings are, but you know that when the car stops and we say, there they go, we shooting. Everybody shoot. We did that every night.
You know that it's gunshots. And the car is just constantly right next to us, and it's just shot after shot after shot after shot. We end up crashing. We all jumped out the car and start running towards the store. They had already called the police and the ambulance and everything. Derek was asking, where's Corey? Where's Corey? And we're like, he's right behind us. He's right behind us. And so he ran back down to the crash site. He was trying to get Corey out the car. On the walkie-talkies, you could hear them say DOA at the scene. So we knew he was gone.
Prosecutors say Kimonti Carter pulled the trigger on his assault rifle. The four defendants belonged to a gang and fired on the innocent victims in the other car early that Saturday morning because they thought they were members of a rival gang. They were not.
My incident happened May 24th, and I got arrested May 27th, 1997. I was 18 years, 2 months old.
I came to prison. I was young, couldn't speak very well, wasn't really educated. Some people believe that in the gang lifestyle that they were somebody. You was important to a particular group of people. They would rather be an important tyrant than an average citizen. That's the struggle. Some people are afraid of being who they are. The road isn't easy. Growing and developing isn't easy. Prison isn't easy.
My name's Kimonti Carter, and I'm currently serving a life sentence for a gang-related drive-by that happened 9 years ago. My victim was innocent. He was also a student who was attending college. His name was Corey Pittman. At this time, I would like to apologize to the Pittman family, because only now have I begun to understand that the enjoyment of life once taken away can never be replaced. And I'm sorry. My history is the life of a lot of kids out there in our community. And my reality as a young man doing life in prison will be their future if we don't start creating better ways of dealing with our children.
All right, yeah. This the block. This the block. 23rd, banging. There go the cameras filming.
Yeah.
Hey, we gonna do that though.
Yep.
What's up tonight though, Law?
Yeah. All right, Don.
You going to that thing?
Super Crip.
I ain't fucking with it.
You was a super motherfucking Crip.
Been a long time since I've been through here.
Yeah.
You're talking almost 30 years. Neighborhood looks a lot better than it did back in the late 80s, early 90s, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of homeowners.
Yeah, it looks a lot different.
It does. We spend most of our hours up here after dark, too. And the streets would just be crawling.
We just started out like any other patrol partners where we were just handling regular police calls. And then we'd be on a burglary call or a vandalism call, and we said, what was that? And we'd hear shots being fired, a block away or a couple blocks away, and then it'd be return shots, somebody shooting out of a car.
How many times did we come across bodies in the street? People who've been shot laying there.
I moved here in August of 1980 from the Detroit area. The football coach that I had, he told me about it. I'd never heard of it before. He made it sound like heaven, coming to the great Northwest, the peaceful Northwest. I was a young lawyer starting a practice, so I was doing domestic, contract law, real estate law. By the end of the 80s, early 90s, it was almost solely felony defense. The News Tribune had a headline comparing Tacoma as being Little Detroit. Very young kids, it seems, were getting involved in horrendous violence 20 to 30 years ago. I think there's no question that the Kitchen Crips from LA came up here and seeded this area.
These niggas came and took over blocks, quarters I lived on all my life. Blue ruled anywhere from Orchard all the way down to the hilltop. And then you had these other guys who was kind of scary and they wore red. They had that on the east side. So red and blue didn't mix in California and didn't mix in Tacoma, Washington.
Tacoma is about 30 miles from Seattle. Many of the African American and other folks that have come to this region after the 40s, after World War II, a large influx of people came. Many people came through Fort Lewis and settled in close proximity to Tacoma. Because of redlining, people were redlined into certain areas. The hilltop in those areas is where Black people were concentrated at that time after World War II. Tacoma is no different from any place else in this country in terms of how people are relegated to that bottom rung if they are poor or if they are of color.
There were so many of our children affected during the late 80s, early 90s. If you were around the age 11, 12, 13 during that time, you were affected by this. So many of the kids didn't survive. They were killed. If they didn't die, they're in prison for a long time. The Hilltop area was already a poverty-stricken neighborhood. And then when you throw prostitution on that, throw gangs on that, throw crack cocaine on top of all that, these kids, they are a product of the environment that they were pushed into.
And there was so much dope that was just saturated in Tacoma alone. It was just ridiculous. In 1988, it was flooded. We lived in a world that was unbelievable. We did things that I never knew that I would live to see this day. Oh man, the drugs, the guns, the few alleged killings. These kids grew up in something that a lot of people don't want to face reality about.
I've been doing this for about 20-something years, running the streets up here, trying to make a rep, make a name for myself and my friends. I don't know, it's kind of really hard talking about this because there's a lot of emotions involved in this. I lost a lot of good friends and I met some really good friends in this, you know. But I am a blood. I'm a bounty hunter, east side Tacoma, Washington. That's my family. That's all I knew when I came up here. This is where I felt alive at. Wait to hear news about a rival gang at the mall or at the bowling alley, and we'll go up there just to, you know, get a gangbang. That's what we was doing. Out here, like, we had some freedom. Smoke weed, drink, talk to girls, drive cars up and down the street fast. The woods was away from the police. Kind of like slavery. When the slaves broke away, they ran to the woods. We seen the police, we ran to the woods. Oh, Kimonti. I just would have turned out different. I just, sometimes, you know, you can't turn back time, but I was just would have listened, man. He wouldn't even be in this situation. He's a good dude, just was lost. I guess we all was lost. It was a blind leading the fucking blind out here. We didn't know no better.
Kimonti used to be out here with us. You know, baby quickie, young gangster, young brother just eager to prove his worth. I was 18 when I met him, but he was doing the same things I was doing, you know, and he was only 11 to 12. He felt like we were his family.
Little baby gangster. We couldn't tell him what to do. We want to do it this way.
He looked at you straight in your eyes. Had this no fear attitude. He needed something, like I never seen his mom around, like, you know, I knew she was there, but you know what I mean? He was just outside with us, so it was like, come on.
I didn't know too much about Kimonti's dad. I never seen him. I seen his mom. I seen how he grew up into like a really bad situation. Apartments was run down, poor looking, really no food, really bad.
He was basically raising himself. That's where we came in.
And here we was, picking him up, keeping him out with us, showing him the ropes, showing him how to run the streets a little bit. Hold his pistol. Hold his pistol. All right, now here you go. Here's your pistol. And you got your pistol. Keep it on you. I don't know. There's a saying, no love among thieves. Well, we had love among our thieves. We all loved each other. We looked out for each other. It wasn't all like a lot of people make it up to be.
It was just a group of older guys who let you hang around. And they almost kind of treated you like a peer of theirs. If they was smoking cigarettes, they would hand you a cigarette. If they was drinking alcohol, they would let you sip on some alcohol. They paid attention, right? They really kind of genuinely cared. And it may have been in subtle ways, right? Handing you a few dollars, giving you a nickname, so to speak. But, I think that for young kids, those are meaningful moments.
We wanted to be like the OGs who'd been to prison, came home. They got the respect because they went to prison. That's it. They went to prison and we wanted to be like them. All my friends is either in prison now, forever, or dead.
So I dug this old relic out. I wasn't certain I could find it. And it was actually down at the FBI office. I dug it out of there. But this thing, it's got to date back to 88, 89.
Yeah.
We were educating ourselves. There were so many kids out here running as gang members that we started keeping a notebook on them, and we started getting pictures. And they found out we had it, and they all wanted to see it. Some of them come up and say, my face isn't in there. They'd pose for a photograph.
Those were all the original kids that were recruited and taught how to be gang members by the LA gangs. They were smart, they were natural leaders. The other kids looked up to them and listened to them. They could all do math in their head. They all thought they were stupid or whatever because they hadn't finished school, but they knew how many ounces were in a pound, how many 8-balls you could get out of an ounce, how much money they should get back, how much they were owed. They were sharp.
Little guys, they had to be 10 or 12 now.
The first time that I've ever encountered law enforcement, I was young. I was a kid. I ended up running away from home. I was basically living in this abandoned house with all of these other teenagers and kids. One morning I was riding my little bike because I was cutting through the house because the house was kind of like a shortcut, to the next block. I seen some police in the backyard. This woman police officer who then drew down on me, telling me don't move or she was gonna shoot me. That's the first time I've ever got arrested. Instead of taking me home, they took me to juvenile. I was 11. I guess they kind of charged us with burglary. Those kids that I hung with, I kind of claimed them as my family. When I didn't have no home, that's what was there for me.
Every single time I went to juvenile, I always met somebody who did something different. I'm talking about I ain't never met none of you kids before in my life, but all of a sudden I meet with Said, and Said's talking about how he's in here for possession of crack cocaine. You know what I'm saying? And he was making $200 and $300. Paperboy is no longer in my mind. Jeff is selling guns. Now what you guys are doing is you just fueling my imagination because you guys are all my age.
Southside Hilltop coming through.
I'm on the block, just trying to set my motherfucking stack of rocks. That's how I get paid. Niggas not trying to gang bang, not trying to dope slang, just trying to have the same thing as the motherfucking white folks in the motherfucking suburbs, man. Just trying to get my grip, nigga. They want to.
We were shut out economically. We're still shut out economically. The institutional racism that we have around economics still persists. The underlying issues haven't changed. Disparities with education, with employment, with healthcare, with transportation, with housing. Oh, let's look at drugs. Let's look at gangs. Let's just look at violence. Those are outcomes. Those are not inputs. The inputs are the disparities that lead to that.
In America, money speaks. Money makes policy. Money decides who makes money off of drugs and whose communities are devastated. It is systemic.
Are we really saying to ourselves in this country that money is more important than any other thing on earth? And how to get it, and who you get it from, and injustice, and all that other stuff is just, this system is a son of a bitch. It really is. If that's all you leave for me to have, I will make it work. When they was killing the hogs for white folks, you know, while I'm your slave, I ate what you had left. And you damn sure didn't leave no pork roast for me and no baby back ribs. You know, I got the snout, the feet, the ears, the tail, the guts, good chitlins. And Mama and them made it the best they could because that was what they had. If you leave them to drugs, alcohol, criminal activity, to make a living, they're gonna make a living.
Take them to church. Take them to church, Carl.
Oh, yeah.
I was a single mother raising 2 children on the hilltop. Didn't have much money. The California gangs came up, made it so appealing to be a gang member. I could maybe put $10 in his pocket for allowance where they would give him $1,000 in his pocket. I always think that if Willie had been younger or older, he wouldn't have been swept into that lifestyle, but he was just a prime age for what they were looking for. He was 11, and they were already starting the recruiting process to get Willie and many other young ones to sell rock cocaine and powder cocaine. One time, he told me that he wasn't going to go to school, and I told him, oh, you're going to school today. And he made a phone call, and 10 minutes later, there was 3 cars in the alley, gang members sitting on the hood of their cars. They were brandishing guns, and they told me, your son's not going to school today because he's coming with us. They took him. I felt so helpless, like, how do I fight this? Calling the police, they didn't care. I said it was his choice.
That's when it took off, and that's when it got so violent. A lot of kids running around wild. I lost about like 30 friends at this time, but we really didn't have known how many lives it had affected and how bad it would end up being.
It just got worse, and then finally one day I was at work, and my husband at the time told me, you need to get home because the police are going through your house for search warrants. And when I got home, they said, your son crossed the line this time, and we got him for murder. That's when Willie was 17. At 18, they sentenced him to 100 years in prison.
In elementary school, the teachers called me that problem kid. So I was labeled early. I ended up getting kicked out of school. I was, 16, 17, and 18. Those should have been my graduation high school years, but instead, I'm on the streets, selling crack, gang banging, and thinking that I wasn't gonna make the C-21. I would get dressed in all red and ride the bus to the hill just to walk around and wait for a group of blues to approach me. First, I would try to fight them, antagonize them. I'd walk in the middle of them, and then I'd pull out that thing and watch them scatter when I'd boom, boom, you know, watch them run like roaches. Then I got addicted to being feared. My mom was here trying to be the disciplinarian and the breadwinner, but she didn't have no help. I rebelled against her, but it wasn't her fault. We were in this together, and that's what I should have known then.
My mom was my first love. Up until the mid-'80s, when crack became the reason to be for her, it was okay. But she had an addiction, and it grew monstrous. Her addiction to crack superseded everything. Her dignity, her ability to reason, her desire to be a mother. It was one of the things that broke me.
Tonya's mom was on drugs, doing her thing. My mom was in the streets on drugs, doing her thing. So we were at grandma's house where we were safe. Luckily, our parents had enough sense to put us somewhere where we would be cared for. We're young and we got older cousins in the streets, and like I said, we're at grandma's house. We seen the lifestyle, we wanted the money, and we seen the boys, and we were fascinated, and we were 11 and 12, and we were walking to the boys club, and all the gang members used to be on 15th, so sooner or later, they started calling us over. And from there, we was the homegirls.
I didn't like the life that I was living, but somehow I felt helpless to change it. I felt like I was just being carried on this wave of circumstance. Not being able to have a job, not being able to be the person that I thought that I could be. I just couldn't seem to get to her. I remember a few days before being incarcerated, crying out to God and knowing how trapped I felt, knowing how limited my options were. And I just wanted out of that life. I didn't stand on the corner, I didn't do drive-bys, but I had a boyfriend that did. And I had fooled myself into thinking that if I just stayed on the fringes of that lifestyle, that I couldn't get caught up. It wasn't true. When they started rounding up the usual suspects, and I was one, my boyfriend was one, all my protestations of innocence, they just fell on deaf ears.
For a lot of those kids who are 14, 15, 16 years old, they're able to think abstractly to a certain point. Being able to calculate the consequences for their actions, I don't think that they've matured enough to do that.
My homeboy fight, I fight. If he shoot, I shoot. What he do, I do. It's my brother. I don't leave him behind. You die, I guess we both die.
It's one thing to be able to study a subject, but it's another thing to be the subject. There's just some things in life that can't be taught. You know what I'm saying? They have to be lived to be understood. Being 14 and 15 years old, riding around with a gun, just hoping for that opportunity to really prove that I am somebody. It's not like you're out there trying to get a job, trying to stay truthful to yourself and that you're gonna finish high school and all those different types of stuff. It didn't work that way. You know what I'm saying? Because the pressure The pressure that you was feeling in order to have to be able to take care of yourself as a young man, you know what I'm saying, was now to where the school and the future, we're not even thinking about those things no more, man. I'm 15 years old. I'm not in school no more. We hustling, that is it. You know what I'm saying? We're getting it by any means. You know what I'm saying? We got guns now. We're willing to take anything from anybody else because we wanted it.
It's just a vicious cycle that we all trapped in. The ghetto trap, what it's called, the ghetto trap. You know, they give us guns and drugs and then wonder why in the fuck we thugs. We socialized that way to believe that prison and death is a normality.
It was so much death. You just get to the point that it's just no more tears. You just become numb. These kids are numb.
It was normal for us to go to a funeral once a week. Whether they was having a funeral on the hilltop or whether they was having a funeral for the east side. One of those two.
The carnage that was on the hilltop, and I'll say it reached its peak late 80s, early 90s, was unthinkable. At one point, I went to 10 funerals in 6 weeks. I'm one lawyer. In 1994, I had 8 murder cases. Things were spiraling wildly out of control in this town.
There must be no doubt about whose side we're on. People who commit crimes should be caught, convicted, and punished. The savings will be used to put 100,000 police officers on the street, a 20% increase. It will be used to build prisons to keep 100,000 violent criminals off the street.
You will be put away and put away for good. 3 strikes and you are out.
In 1993, Washington State was the first state in the nation to implement the 3 strikes policy and make it okay to put people in prison and throw away the key. There are many people who have rehabilitated their lives who could be contributing to our young people, to our families, and that door has been slammed shut in Washington State. We are still one of only 16 states that does not have the parole system. What's interesting about Washington State is really reflective of what's interesting about the whole country. This country is based on fear. When you have a country that is based on or that has grown out of colonization and slavery, people don't rest easy. That's why everyone needs to be armed in this country to protect what they have, because what they have was stolen. May not talk about it, may not admit it, but it's there, whether you are on the red or on the blue, whatever side it is, no one sleeps easy in this country.
Mr. Speaker, I simply want to say...
Legislators have an inherent conflict of interest. The number one objective of any legislature is to get reelected. How do you get reelected? It's really easy. Pound your podium and say I'm tough on crime.
Of the children who have been killed, the victims of violence.
The public is fed up.
And that means more prison time.
We have a greater percentage of our population in prison right now than any society in the history of Western civilization. And we have this high and mighty attitude about ourselves. I want you to imagine that as much as 60 to 70 cents out of every tax dollar in my county goes toward criminal justice. It is a horrendous waste of resources. If you don't care about people, it's a horrendous waste of resources on the profit and loss sheet.
It's very, very easy to instigate fear. That's what happened with 3 strikes, because the face of the threat then became young black and brown men.
We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. And the president has asked the FBI to launch a very concerted effort against gangs everywhere.
John and I were picked to go to the FBI task force. They were forming a task force to work gangs. We met with the drug czar privately.
As you go around the country, you see in communities everywhere people who are no longer willing to hide in their houses.
This is our hill. All we want them to know is go buy your drugs in Puyallup or Lakewood. Don't come here.
You've got to take a stand. But are willing, with leadership and with involvement from the police and direction from the police, willing to take to the streets.
He wanted to know why we were having success with our federal task force, because they'd set them up all over the country and not all of them were kicking ass like we were, and he wanted to know why. John and I knew the gang members from working the streets, and so we kind of knew who they should be targeting.
The police started doing more sweeps. They would just get the kids and round them up for whatever little reason they could. If they could get them on a sentence, they'd give them a long sentence, keep them from ever coming back.
They used to plant dope on these kids, plant guns on these kids, kick in doors and then get the search warrant later. I got you. When they got you down there in that damn bay in the tank, they got you in one of them rooms all by yourself, and if they caught you by yourself, your ass is going to jail.
It may not have even been a criminal activity. They just, because they were out there, they'd get them just on loitering.
If I was walking to the corner store and I saw a house a little further up that I thought looked nice, so I wanted to walk by it, and the police saw me, they would say to me, what you doing here? You don't live around here.
This house is not what you're loitering on from lawn.
The narrative that we keep hearing is that there are people who are entitled to be here, even though folks know that this is not anybody's, it's not their land. So that narrative of being entitled and really protecting that is really what drives a lot. But we as a country don't want to uncover that. It's too painful. Given a race-based country such as we are, the people that really are impacted are the poorest and the blackest.
Looking back now, I'm able to see everything that happened. I wasn't able to see it then, so I wasn't able to avoid the traps that were set for me. A lot of us weren't. I don't want to excuse any of the crimes that were committed because there were crimes committed, but some people didn't commit crimes and were just caught up in the friends that they chose. And it wasn't even the friends that they chose, the friends who they grew up with. This is the neighborhood you lived in. These are the kids you went to school with. These is the people whose auntie house you went to eat Sunday dinner at. Most of us didn't just wake up and say, I want to be a gang member. This is what I'm going to be in life. We just grew into that because this is what we were exposed to in the neighborhood.
In the last part of my career, I had the best job in the Tacoma Police Department. I had ultimate freedom to set my own targets and my own investigations. As long as I was producing, they left me alone. So didn't have a lot of supervision.
By the late 90s, the Hilltop area was pretty much cleaned up.
I got convicted of aggravated murder, a drive-by. Aggravated murder is the highest crime in Washington. They changed some law in a hard time for armed crime in 1994 that says if a murder occurs during the discharge of a firearm from a motor vehicle, then you can be subject to the death penalty or life in prison. If I would have got sentenced to first-degree murder, I probably would have had 27 years. Since the murder occurred during the discharge of a firearm from a motor vehicle, I got 777 years.
The reason that a judge did not have the ability to give him a sentence of less than life without parole is that the legislature made it an aggravating circumstance to do a drive-by shooting. Because he shot impulsively, without knowing who was in the other car, but out of a car, only one punishment was appropriate. That law was passed because mostly white legislators viewed it as worse for gang members to shoot from a car. It was a clear reaction to the fear of black and Hispanic individuals.
Use a weapon in the commission of a crime.
The promise of the criminal justice system is that it rises above race.
The title of the bill will be the title of the act.
When I work in Washington State, that's a state that is overwhelmingly white. That's not true when I go into a prison. The criminal justice system remains broken by the influence of race.
Lose your sense of humanity, your sense of privacy. You're surrounded by metal and concrete. It's dehumanizing. You feel like cattle, you feel like something that's not real. They strip you down and search you. It's a roller coaster on your emotional well-being. You get put in a cell, 8x10 cell with people that you don't know, you never met, you don't know what they're there for, what they're about. It's a deprivation to your senses. It's hard to explain.
You're away from everything that you know. I could not conceive of my life taking place within the walls that I saw around me.
We're going to give you 3 meals a day. We're going to give you a cement slab or a steel slab to sleep on, and that's basically it. There is no rehabilitation. There's no repairing.
Prison as a socializing force, a total institution, does it work? By and large, no.
People learn to become antisocial. It's not designed to help anybody grow. Officers make sure that you understand that you are a prisoner. When you find yourself in contact with them, they tend to look down as a way of not giving you eye contact. For a lot of prisoners, it kind of makes them internalize that you're nobody. I don't think that as prisoners, we're treated as people.
There's a lot of us that are here and we're just existing within the system.
The market is still dead. Financial journalists.
I believe it's an organization that is used to be profited from, because I really don't believe that it takes almost 40 years for a person to change. We are security, job security.
When that white man put them handcuffs on you, it's all over. It's like modern day fucking slavery. You know what I mean? And to get out of that, you gotta educate yourself.
Whatever your lifestyle is, we're gonna figure out how we can tackle those issues so we can be better men in here today. What you remember about a situation affects your perception. Your perception about that situation and what you remember affects your reasoning. And it ultimately equals problem-solving skills and how you handle everything that you deal with in your life, which ultimately led me to prison and gave me the sentence that I have today. Because I remember nobody was there for me, so I don't need nobody. So my perception says, look out for yourself. My reasoning is, who else is gonna do it? I don't remember nobody being there. Problem solving is, I'm gonna cut some corners as soon as I get a chance.
This is all of us. This ain't, you know what I mean? This is all of us. we're all here, we're all in prison. It took me 30 plus years to address some of those memories, to really stand up to some of those memories and say, that's why I acted like that. Anything that's not growing is dead. It's for all things in the world, man. So whether you 50-something or whether you 20-something, if you're not continuing to grow, then you dead mentally. Some of us have been residing in a mental death. And this class is to start you to thinking, to start working towards healthy thinking. And outside of this room, man, if any of you guys ever need to speak, you know what I mean? If it's in the gym, the weight room, wherever, man, if we need to talk moving forward, you guys got that coming. Young man, good to see you, boy.
In this country, education is about getting credentialed so that you can get a job and make money. The Black Prisoners Caucus is about liberation. How do you use education as a tool to get healthy, to really understand your reality so that it's relevant, and to change your reality and to transform?
The Black Prisoners Caucus has been here before I've even been born, actually. It was birthed out of the discrimination that was alive and well in the prison system.
The Black Prisoners Caucus was founded by men who were incarcerated kind of on the wake of the civil rights movement, Black Power movement. It was that whole awareness of what it means to be Black and to be powerful in the 70s that was contagious everywhere. It was really developed to just strengthen our community, both inside and out.
I'd always see people in prison that I didn't want to end up like. Older men who kind of acted like I did. I didn't want to be the 40-year-old gang member. But I started to see certain individuals in prison that held themselves to a different standard. Dudes who were well-spoken, educated, dudes that was able to achieve things on their own since they've been incarcerated. And I think that these were some of the things that kind of motivated me. That's kind of one of the things that helped me transform, was being able to see that it was possible.
To have a conversation with him and not get
I heard the stories, and I was inspired by the stories of the work that they were doing to support the men that were coming in and to do work to keep people from coming in. The Black Prisoner Caucus Summits were originally put together as a way to bring policymakers, politicians into the prison to really understand the prisoner's perspective. Summits are an opportunity for as many as 150 people from community come into the prison. The men organize these summits, very similar to a conference that you would have in the community. Usually they'll have either a topic or multiple topics that they focus on that day.
Juveniles are becoming highly criminalized. The term used for these highly criminalized juveniles was super predator.
I used to be a young dude sitting in this room, and they used to be talking about stuff that I didn't have no clue about. You know what I'm saying? Politics, policies, legislators. And I used to hear people speak about these different type of things. I used to hate not knowing.
institutional racism.
I used to hate watching CNN and see these guys talking about politics and have no clue about what they was talking about. But knowing that these decisions were affecting my life somehow. And I would say that that is kind of one of the things that sent me on my quest. I wanted to learn. I think that the opportunities with the Black Prisoners Caucus, with my interaction with free people, I'm able to really internalize that I'm not an offender, I'm not a prisoner, I'm just a man who happens to be in prison.
One of the things that the Black Prisoners Caucus says is that they may be absent from community, but they're still a part of community.
Seeing people come from the outside every single week who cared about us, you know what I'm saying, who let us know that we were still part of the community. I'll always remember Mary, she said, if we planned on returning back to the community how we came in here, then we might as well stay in here. I was the president of the Black Prisoners Caucus at Monroe. I went to the hall for a Class A infraction, possession of a cell phone. Because I was life without, it didn't grant me the opportunity to stay at Monroe. I got shipped to Column Bay. At Monroe, the Black Prisoners Caucus was essentially a large part of everything that was going on there. But when I got here, there was nothing. I basically just reached out to administration, and they was kind of hesitant on allowing us to be able to have the name Black Prisoners Caucus. It was too radical for them, I think, for something to have black in it. I just reinforced that the Black Prisoners Caucus has a long, productive history within the Department of Corrections. And so eventually it wore on them. Black Prisoners Caucus. All right, it's unanimous. You know, we've been able to really get going. And so, you know, as we started to have some of our first meetings, the idea was now, what is it that we want to see, right? What are the opportunities that we need in order for us to, you know, really stay committed on improving self? You'll begin to meet people who's been down longer than you've been alive. People locked up since the 70s. And so you'll realize that, you know what? They're really not letting people out of here. How many of you guys got 7 years or more? How many of you guys got more than 10 years? 15?
20.
20? 30? That's a lot of black fathers from the home, man, that's gone. That's a lot of missing husbands, that's a lot of missing sons. Not only do you have to make a commitment, but you have to make a choice. If I still want to continue living the life that got me here, or I want to try living a better life, right? We can never become somebody different, but we can become a better version of who we are.
Almost immediately upon entering Clallam Bay, I found out that a few guys had just started a program that they called TEACH, and it stood for Taking Education and Creating History.
Me and Kimonti, I've been knowing him since we was kids in the same streets. He was on the east side, I was on the hilltop. So we was really rivals back then, but when he came here, I seen him and he was involved with BPC and he wanted to start a TEACH program. He came up with the idea, we was like, okay, let's do it.
There were several of us who were at Clallam Bay who had a lot of time to do in prison, and we weren't being allowed to attend education classes.
The priority for our education department is those individuals with 7 years or less on their sentence.
So if you have more than 7 years, which a lot of people do, you don't get a chance to get an education.
We wanted to get professors to be able to come out here, but we was too far.
So the next thing was, do we either let this program go to waste or do we figure out a way to make it float? So the way that we came up with was, we'll just teach the classes.
Just work backwards from here, and then we're just gonna move on. So we knew that we could teach math, we knew that we could teach writing, and so it was more about the skill sets that we already had and being able to just really nurture those and provide those in a classroom setting.
2 and 8,
All right, and so y equals
4. So negative and a negative is a positive.
All right. We reached out to a lot of prisoners, right? Guys who had degrees and all that type of stuff, but then we also quickly came to the realization, just because you have a degree doesn't mean that you can teach. Eventually, we began to find guys who teaching was something that was a natural talent for them.
We set about creating our own syllabuses and our own curriculum and teaching our own classes. It started changing and shaping people's thinking, and from there, the word spread.
When I got here and was working on the school floor, I blew by the TEACH classroom, and it was the first time I ever seen a classroom being taught without an officer in it. It was prisoners lifting up prisoners. And so when I seen these guys doing this stuff, I had to be part of it.
And we're combining the 2 quarters.
Yeah. 2 hours within the day.
We decided to diversify our board. This way we can attract more students, but also we can understand each other more. It's reaching all corners of the prison.
Part of me coming on board with this was seeing what you guys were doing and wanting to get behind that. I was like, yes, finally, an opportunity for me to go and do something productive that wasn't provided before that inmates created. We've created a support group for positivity in the most unlikely of environments.
We've been pitted against one another for so long, it literally allows the prison to run itself. As long as they stay separated, we ain't got to worry about them coming together, becoming knowledgeable, fixing the social issues that end up landing them in prison in the first place. The more that we begin to educate ourselves, the more empowered we become. The less manipulated we can be, the less oppressed we can be. Now what we're beginning to realize is that we can get more accomplished together than we can apart.
There's a lot of invisible barriers that exist in this environment and in the world at large. This is why I'm so keyed in on politics, because I understand that politics is the system that created these invisible barriers to keep the masses of people separated for the purposes and objectives of a small group of people who manipulate the masses and reap benefits off the masses by turning them into commodities. And so when I look at situations like TEACH, I begin to deal with guys across ethnic lines. And I know that sometimes this is uncomfortable. I try to be the one that always say, man, you're a man and I'm a man, so we can talk. we could put all the other stuff to the side. You trying to be better and I'm trying to be better so we can talk. Teach is a communal learning environment that's not physical, but it's mental and it's spiritual.
Emotional.
And emotional.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an energy that we are connecting between each other and we're building a society.
When I first heard about the Black Prisoners Caucus and Teach, I expected it to be more exclusive rather than inclusive. But we have everybody here.
The thing is to be able to also empower you, to give you a seat at the table. The uniqueness about Teach is that not one of us in the circle has a degree in education, but every one of us can put together a class and teach it in this classroom.
When I got here, I didn't really think about anything about Teach. I just saw it as another program, right? As another program that maybe it was run by the administration, and as always, you know, in prison we tend to be suspicious about any program that is run by the administration. I saw that you have African studies, you have Asian American studies, and you have the Viking history. It made me realize that I want to take my chances on learning about this program.
Everybody wants to learn about where they come from, and then they start learning about who they were, and start getting pride on the accomplishments that their people have created throughout history, and then it makes them want to accomplish something and add to something instead of constantly taking away.
So okay, so last week we were talking about the mestizo concept, right? On what you guys think about the concept of mestizo.
Mestizo is a Spanish word that means something which is mixed. This mestizo concept outlook deals with the usage of words like half-caste, half-breed, Ladino, cholo, coyote, rice eaters, cherry pickers, border jumpers, wetbacks, etc. The same people who colonized these lands and titled it America are the same ones who are able to tell you who you are and how far you are able to get in life.
How can we go about erasing this from our minds, right? And all these descriptions that take away some part of our identity, right? Sometimes they don't truly describe who we are. How can we...
Growing up in school, I never really learned anything other than slavery about myself. It made me feel unattached to school. It made me not want to go to school anymore. We didn't get to really see ourselves in the text. I teach an African studies class now. It isn't only to teach African studies, it's to teach these young Black men that they're more than what we've been taught, the power that they hold. We're more than what we've been taught that we are.
One thing I learned in the Asian American Studies class is like when a country is conquered or whenever there's a war, whoever wins writes the history on that. So now you got them writing a bad history about whoever they conquered. That's where a lot of those barriers and walls were created.
Your whole life, you think you know something, and then when you finally learn something new, it's like, man, I've been served this disinformation. So that's what I took out of the cultural classes that helped me, you know, open my eyes to be more tolerant of those that are around me and that I'm shoulder to shoulder with every day in prison.
Yeah, algebra stuff that we got. Yeah, it goes up into that. Yeah, I put all the class stuff together already, so.
We haven't always worked together in here by any means, right? We spent the majority of our youth working together through fights on the yard. Yeah, I'm covered in swastikas and tattoos, and there's no question about where I stand around here, but at the same time, just because you love who you are and where you come from, it doesn't mean you have to disrespect somebody else.
I start my class by talking about why the Viking Age started and the similarities that are on parallel with other cultures that I had no idea about. I didn't know anything about Mexico or Central America prior to taking Marco's class.
Through our cultural classes, we learn about who we are, about our people, right? And we understand that we have a commonality, right? We learn about our humanity for the most part, you know, and I think that's essential for us to see here today, you know, learning about our humanity Not about if we brown, black, white, you know, just the fact that we human beings and that we learn all the struggles that we've been through. It's our way to take basically history with our hands, you know, and basically create it, you know what I mean?
What's up, fellas?
What's going on, man? 14 students in a math class right now. We got 14 in a Partners in Parenting course. We got a full 16 for Healthy Thinking. We got a full 16 for African Studies. College prep writing is gonna be on Thursday morning. It got about 13 students in it right now. The political science class is full, has a full roster. And
Anger, stress management, Wednesday evening.
stress and anger management is gonna be on Wednesday evening. We got the Asian American Studies course. It has, I believe, 12 students in it. The Mesoamerican class is full also. Soap carving is also full. Your class, I got the change that you wanted to make. I turned that in for you today.
When I come up here to teach every day, I have to check myself continually because at times I feel free. It does something for my soul to be able to interact with people of a different ethnicity. Had we been in a different environment, we would never talk. And for us to be able to transcend this cage that we're in order to reach people and actually make a difference, it reminds me every day that I have a chance. I don't believe that the walls can chain my potential and my purpose.
We dare say that a lot of the answers that people in society are seeking will be found in prison. We've caused pain, but we caused pain primarily because we was in pain. And so every day that we get up, we face a challenge. You know, how I'm gonna do today? What am I gonna do today? I'm gonna try to be better today than I was yesterday. And it ain't about being better than anybody, it's being better than I was. And so we take this mentality, we take this thought process, and we start having conversation with guys who never had these type of conversations, talking about things that once were taboo in different circles and letting it be known that we can transform our reality because we transform in how we think.
Most of our board members are lifers, and most of them have created a reputation for themselves around here that isn't all that sparkling in the eyes of the administration. But the new kids that come in that are ready for battle, that earn their stripes, we're the guys that they would look up to.
There's a kid right now who's probably 19 or 20 years old who, when he first came into this unit, he was ready for a battle, ready for war. And when he came and asked, what's up, what's going on, you know, with the thug mentality and the attitude, it was like, this is what we're on. This is what we're doing. And if you look at him 2 months into him being here, he's over there at a table studying right now. He's doing that on his own because he sees what example we've set.
They leave the class teachers. I want them to go disperse all the information that they can to the other young brothers.
We're trying to give back to the kids that still got a chance at going to the streets and still can be productive citizens. The administration, like, they like this, like, they're happy for this because it helps them. This environment is nowhere near as violent as it has been. When we first started teaching, they was kind of skeptical. They was like, hold on, we don't know what you guys are doing up here. We want to make sure you guys are doing this. But then after they seen all the work we've been doing and all the stuff we've been accomplishing, it's like, okay, this is serious. This is real. This is helping. This is something good. So that's what we've been doing, huh, Chad?
Yeah,
see, I couldn't have did that about 10 years ago.
Because it can essentially just
At first, I really didn't want to leave Colin Bay because of the things that we were doing up there that were so powerful and the relationships that we had with administration. I didn't think that we were going to be able to duplicate some of those things, so I thought to stay there in my comfort zone and continue to build. DeMar was coming up for his time to leave also. DeMar set his mind on Shelton, and I went to my review right after that where I spoke to my counselor and they asked me where did I want to go. When it came time to transfer, they told me Shelton, so I was happy. I sent word to DeMar that I was coming, and he sent word and said, good, I'm glad because I've been having some problems with trying to get the PBC started here.
Most of the people that live in this county work at this prison. This is not a diverse community. The most diversity they have is behind these barbed wire fences. Some days, they have a challenge accepting me. So you can only imagine what the challenges would be around a Black Prisoners Caucus.
The fear that I hear is that, oh, you know, the name is the Black Prisoners Caucus. It's a black gang. We should be fearful of that. People who form ignorant, short-sighted opinions about things like that haven't taken the opportunity to participate and learn really what is going on there.
Welcome to the Washington Correction Center, and thank you for being here today.
I attended that youth summit and I was speechless. I listened to the stories that were being told, the things they had to say really resonated with me and drew me in.
The things that we have been through and the things that we have been around.
I was worried what others would think of me. Would they think I had gone soft? That was my concern. I used to think that not to gangbang was a sign of weakness.
I only intended to be there for a few minutes to kind of check in, do an introduction, see what it was about, and when I sat down, I didn't want to get back up.
We hope to help young people avoid making some of the same bad decisions that we made. Also, we hope to be able to reach young people themselves.
We believe in them and expect them to influence and add to the world.
Once we solidified the BPC here, we wanted to move on to the next thing and start the TEACH program, because this prison, as far as prisons, is kind of the mecca of prisons in our state. This is where every person first comes to, and this is where every person, if you're transferring from one prison to another prison, you have to come through here. So us being inmates who's gonna be here for a while, we see everybody in the state. They have to cross our paths. I see young guys all the time come through here whose life I've influenced negatively. That's something that I've had to live with, working towards having a positive influence on those generations now. It gives me a way to undo some of the wrongs that I've done in the past.
It's amazing to see people share, right? Because as men, we talk about being strong, you know what I mean? Everybody wants to be strong, man, but you know, we might be physically strong, but you know, are we emotionally weak?
Usually I don't talk a lot. As you can see, I usually listen and just listen. But right now I'm trying to learn that it's good to talk, to speak with somebody. It's really, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Observing is a huge part of this class also, man. Sometimes you might not speak every time, but just the fact that you in here at your age working on it, man, I commend you.
We don't have spaces in which we can truly be ourselves. And for you not to truly be your real self, man, you rob yourself every day. We gotta have places where we can come talk about. You gotta have that in the world. Everybody wants to grow, man. You know, even the people that tell you that they don't, the reason why they're saying that is they're probably afraid. You know, especially in a place like this.
I thought I was untouchable. I thought I'll never wind up back in prison again. I'm tired of thinking like that. You know, I got 7 kids. I got 6 daughters and 1 boy. I want to get out and I want to show that, you know what, I can be that father that you all deserve.
My son got incarcerated here, and I learned what my biggest fear was. And it goes back into what Dee had on the board about memory. One of my son's great friends is Charles Pouncey, and he said, your son used to say he wished he could come to prison just so he could be with you. In that moment, I said, this is what you've left your child and this woman and your family to do. They say, you said if you ain't thinking, it's dead. You're never too old to find that peace with your children, with yourself.
This prison is what me and Demore like to always call a blank canvas and a beautiful landscape. I think that there are a lot of things that we can accomplish here if given the opportunity.
Everybody's watching everything they do. Everywhere they go, everywhere they gather, they have to really, really, really be above board to make this happen. They have to worry about being put in a hole. They have to worry about being moved to another prison, depending on how hard they push. They don't want to be too vocal because they don't want to be signaled out as a security risk, because they're being vocal about something that they want to learn. They can move them at any time. They could be just rolled up and moved to another facility at any time for any reason. There's nothing I can say or do about it.
I'm pretty sure they still doubting us all the way up to this point. But you can't argue with our results. That's the thing that you can't argue with. Cameras in every classroom. Like, as soon as we got a classroom, cameras start coming up in here. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like, okay, well, we got to see exactly what's happening, but that's good. Not only put a camera up in here, you can come and sit in our classroom and you can learn too. Anybody else got pencils?
Maturity is the capacity to use one's intelligence without the guidance of another. What Kant is conveying is that no one, not even a monarch, government can impede enlightenment of the public. That's what I got.
Okay. Huh? I thought it was a difficult read.
I thought it was a difficult read, but I mean, that's what I grasped from it, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's just my.
Right, and it's not about right or wrong, it's about interpretation. No one can say if your interpretation is wrong. We don't have Immanuel Kant here to be able to ask him, what did you mean by this? And you'll have English scholars, literary scholars who will try to explain to you what somebody who lived 200, 300 years ago literally meant when they don't know. What am I gathering from this? And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters is what you're gathering, right? Because
there's a lot of people here who are under the idea that we are kind of exceeding our boundaries as prisoners.
If somebody is lying to you, if somebody is I've always been so scared about how I've looked on paper. The death of Corey, how him being a young college kid and me being just, some little hoodlum from Tacoma, how anybody would be able to kind of see the person that I've become or my humanity. That's something that's always been a fear of mine. Nobody would really ever give me a chance.
Washington State does not have parole. It wiped out parole in the early 1980s. What it replaced parole with was determinate sentences. In other words, I'm going to sentence you to a period of time and it cannot be reduced. Doesn't matter what you do in prison, that's your sentence. Washington has started to figure out that system is not very just, that it doesn't work. And so they've started to bring parole back. They actually brought parole back for sex offenses, and the other group is juveniles. If Kimonti had committed the crime 61 days earlier, he was 2 months past his 18th birthday, he would have been a juvenile, and he'd be eligible for parole today. The problem with punishment, the problem with setting a life without parole sentence for somebody who was 18 years old at the time of the crime is you don't know who he's going to be 20 years on.
It was never really something that I was intending to do. After a while, I just got curious, right? Because there was a lot of people who was actually going home through clemency. The first thing I did is I kind of started writing letters to some attorneys about, what was the possibilities. Within a week, he sent me a letter and told me to call him. He said that doing my clemency would be something that he would be willing to do. That was probably the first good news that I didn't probably ever heard in my whole time being down, right?
Today we filed a clemency petition with the Washington State Clemency Board. It's a formal request asking for a commutation of Kimonti's sentence, asking the governor to change his life sentence to essentially credit for time served, to let him go.
I had different family members that had been to prison and seen him, even some that went and spoke with him. Different people would tell me, oh, he's changing, he's trying to be a better person. At that point, I really wasn't ready to accept that. I had thought about reaching out to him. I would start to write him and then I'd throw it away. I did that probably maybe 6 or 7 times. And then I just said, okay, forget it. Probably 6 months after that, Kimonti sent me a message. I read it. I read it a couple times over and over. I let some of my family members read it. My grandmother, she raised me from the time I was 6 months old. And she always instilled in us a spirit of forgiveness. And he had asked me for my forgiveness in his message that he sent to me. And so I told him, I said, I forgave you a long time ago. I'm not going to forget what happened. I said, but I forgave you. I said, I understand the challenges you may have had growing up. And I'm not excusing your behavior, but I forgive you. I said, not only am I forgiving you for what you did, I have to forgive you to allow myself to move on and to heal.
While Willie was in prison, his daughter was murdered. She was 3.5 years old when she was murdered. The lady that beat my granddaughter to death, I've forgiven her. She didn't have the tools to be a mother. She grew up in such a violent atmosphere and was in a gang when she was 11. And so when she had my granddaughter, she wasn't capable of showing love, or she didn't know how. And so in an angry, drug-addicted rage, she beat my granddaughter to death. And I'll always miss Zanaya. Zanaya would be 23 years old now. But I want her to have a second chance, you know? Because I feel like she never had a chance. I remember when I was in Olympia fighting for this bill, I was a mother trying to fight for her son and fight for people to get out on parole. But all these victims came in. And I thought, well, I've been a victim too, And I thought, you know what? Maybe next time we go to fight for this bill, I'll be a victim supporting the bill. Well, they go up and say, I'm a victim and I am against this bill. I'm a victim and I'm for this bill.
We are in this dichotomous, you're either a victim or you're a perpetrator. It's not true. Victims are perpetrators, perpetrators are victims. And we have to get to a place where we understand we're all victims of this system. I've had a son who was murdered. And I have a family that had different ideas about what justice meant and what they wanted to come out of that process. And I think that had I not had the experience that I'd had with the Black Prisoners Caucus over 20 years, I may or may not have had the same feeling about that, but I was able to immediately forgive. It requires that we look historically, we contextualize what has happened so that it's not just I did something to you or you did something to me. There's other environmental things that are pushing our behavior, impacting our behavior.
Each of us has the capacity, the unfortunate capacity, to do terrible things if the wrong set of circumstances are presented. We need to get to a place in this country where people can atone for their actions. and where the hand of forgiveness can be extended. Prisons are not institutions that detail the good things that happen in prison. But every once in a while, a prison official recognizes that an individual has accomplished something that deserves being talked about. And in Kimonti's case, a prison official told me that Kimonti had done more in terms of race relations in prison than anybody who had ever worked at that prison. That included professional staff. We submitted our petition with a great deal of hope because we felt that Kimonti had satisfied the somewhat vague standard of showing extraordinary circumstances meriting a change in his sentence.
I think that it's more about them being able to see the Kimonti that I've become and not the Kimonti that I once was. So, I think that if they do deny me, it's because they haven't got past that point yet.
You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. This call is from an inmate at Clallam Bay Correction Center. This call will be recorded and monitored. If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang. Thank you.
I didn't make none of them changes. I do none of the shit he doing in prison. Made it worse for myself in prison. I made it worse for myself. I don't want him to lose faith. I want him to continue going on what you're doing, because you're helping the next person get out of jail and continue to stay out of jail, to be a better father, son, brother, person in society. Because they put shackles on don't mean you locked up.
All right, go ahead, complete your thoughts.
My interest is in people like Kimonti who've worked on rehabilitation and who've been told by the system, you will never get out. It does not matter what you do in prison. It will make no difference in terms of where you die. I want to be able to say, yes, it will, because I believe that somebody like Kimonti makes our community a better community.
This and this, that, this, they're all the same, just in different stages of ripeness. So this one is, yes. So that one's really, really ripe. And there are some who that turn purple, they're just different varieties.
I was released in June. I was at work release until November 5th. During that time I worked, went to school, and now I am still on monetary community custody, and I live with my family. I'm just trying to figure it out. I came back to Tacoma, to the hilltop, and when I came back, the vibe was different. The sense of ownership was different. I had a story for almost every street on that hill. It is beautiful. It's on top of a very nice hill, and it overlooks Commencement Bay, all of downtown. It has ease of access, and it has quality homes. And for so long, it was just Tacoma's pariah, and now it's its darling, and it pisses me off. In some ways, it is worse, but it looks prettier, and white people feel more comfortable. And there's a bike shop and a cafe.
If you look at the hilltop now, you'll see a lot of that has been rebuilt, and now it's being leased out for more money than it used to. I understand now that it was bigger than just us. We presented law enforcement with an easy target so they could kill two birds in one stone. And a lot of us end up paying a large price for it.
You think about all the black men that should be about 45 to 65 right now. And that is the group of people who were literally just captured and put on a different trajectory than the generation before or now the generation after. Not only was our development arrested, the development of a community was arrested with those drugs. There was something that happened that was malevolent, that was planned, that was destructive for a group of people because of where they were at and what color they were.
Free will isn't so free, or it's not equitable. So if you have the resources to have 5 options open to you, and I have the resources to have 2 open to me, how free am I to really choose? And as long as society divvies up opportunity and resources where a certain kind of person has 5 and another kind has 2 for nothing except for superficial characteristics that are outside of an individual's control, it will be society's fault that prisons are full. Society, the state, the government, institutions, all these words that we use that are big and amorphous, that we're trying to make this concrete thing that has power over us is us. And we are complicit in our own captivity as long as we don't know that they are us.
I was just thinking about this word, right? When we get to talk about justice, right? What is justice, right? What comes to mind when we hear the word justice? Prison, huh? What do you say?
Courtroom.
Courtroom.
Oppression. Corruption.
Okay, what's the other? Corruption, courtroom, prison, oppression. Oh. I don't want to say it, but you guys are being a little bit negative, right? Because justice is related to all the bad things that has happened to us, right? So yeah, of course we go with the negative, right? Because of all the things that, courtroom. We all been in a courtroom.
Most of us have negative experiences when it comes to justice.
To the justice system,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so let me maybe kind of rephrase that. When I think of justice, I think this classroom right here and teach, right, in general, with all the classes, is doing each other justice, right? Because at some point in life, there was something that was missing from ourselves. the opportunity that we never had, right? So by us kind of teaching each other something new, something that can empower us, I think it's doing each other justice.
Justice is the penalty or reward for one's actions. I say penalty or reward because justice can be served in a good way also. I just try to make sure that everything that I do, I understand is going to eventually come back on me in some shape or form. And that to me is justice. The good things that I do will eventually come back to me in a good way, and the bad things I do will eventually come back to me in a bad way. It's about integrity for me also. I just think that justice is always watching. Justice isn't a thing just like, you know, if you break the laws of the land, you'll be locked up. That's a small part of justice, but justice is even bigger than that. Justice should control the things that you're doing when nobody else is watching also.
What is justice? It's a question I think about a lot because I don't see it all the time. And I see injustice a great deal. Injustice is arbitrariness. Injustice is discrimination based on race. Injustice is treating people in the criminal justice system as a number, as a standard range of punishment, as a formula. Justice has to be individualized. Justice has to ask, how is the community harmed and how can we make it better? And what role should this individual have in making that community better?
What is justice? That's a tough one. I'm not certain I'll ever know what justice is.
Justice, I'm not sure if I ever thought about it that much. Just do our part in the system, and then the next part had to do their part, the lawyers on both sides and the judges. But I would still feel good about the part I did.
This is not about a prison education program. And to be very clear, it is not about the Department of Corrections at all. They just geographically happen to be oppressed there. They could be oppressed anywhere else in the community. It's a trip because we got some class issues going on. There are many of us who do not believe that people who are in prison can have the answers to our problems. We do not believe that the people sleeping under the bridge can have the answers to their reality. Because we have people with PhDs and master's degrees who then have been certified to do that work. And they have been doing it over and over and over and over and over again. I'm in a system where we've had a 10-year plan that has now turned into a 20-year plan, and they just changed the name, and it's game. Those brothers know game.
So for all of the classes that we've offered this summer,
we can't wait just for people in prison. Aaron's children have the solutions to our problems. And what we will do in 10 years, if we don't attend to this, we'll be visiting I'm not going to put that on your babies, but it's really the truth. Don't think it's not true. Because they got the DOC, the BOP, the Federal Detention Center, the juvenile system, everybody's in the business. And they're waiting for the education system to fail our babies so that they go in there. And I don't even want to blame DOC because it took a whole lot of institutions to get them there. We failed them. In spite of that, they've got the answer. That's that spirit that slavery did not kill. That's that spirit that the genocide, that attempted genocide of indigenous people did not kill.